Thanks very much, DK. Thank you very much. Jenny Melo Velasco, I'm so thankful that Michelle Miller pointed us to you and your important work in supporting various AI tools in small agriculture and what the USDA calls specialty crops, right? So folks, I'm Alfonso Morales. I'm a professor here at the University of Wisconsin at Madison and part of ICICLE AI. And on behalf of DK Panda, the PI, and Nalima
Savadekar, yep.
Savadekar, I would like to welcome you all to Jenny Melo Velasco's lecture, The Social Implications of Digital Agricultural Technologies for Small Farmers. Jenny right now is a postdoctoral researcher at the Center for Regenerative Agriculture at the University of Missouri. I've been fortunate to have relationships there, and it's a great place. She's also a visiting researcher at the Alliance of CIAT and Biodiversity, and the co-founder of Huella Delta, social business based in Colombia. So, Jenny, thank you so much for coming to speak with us, and please begin.
Thank you, Alfonso, and thank you everyone for this invitation. Let me share here like in a second. Let's see, okay. Let's see. So now this. Let me know you can see my screen, okay, or I have to switch.
You'll have to swap it, Jenny.
Now?
Yeah, good.
Okay. So, okay, so thank you again for this time and for this opportunity to talk to you about the social implications of digital agricultural technologies, particularly for small farmers. So today, in this short presentation, I want to talk about what we know about the social implications and what we need to learn, or what aspect we need to deep dive. So first, I would like to talk, I would like to be clear about my background. Where, yeah, again, okay, is there? I would like to show about my background in qualitative research. It's important to present what is the point from which we are speaking. So I have a PhD in rural sociology, but previously I studied business management, social sciences, and sustainability, and that shape how I see and how I work with these digital agricultural technologies. Another important thing to consider is that I am applied research, and I am inspired by this commitment to do research that also, that can advance academic scholarship, but also can offer applicable insights to practitioners, but also for the community, and particularly for those members in the community that face less power and agency. And also, my thoughts and reflections are inspired by my years of experience as a researcher, but also as an entrepreneur and consultant in Latin America. So from this mix and background is where I am talking today. So I would like to explore some questions today. The first is why we need to talk, why we need to talk about this today. So we all have this common ground of the urgency and the relevance on this topic. So this is important to talk about this today because in the market, so we are seeing in the market, a myriad, manifold products and services entering into the market. And these products and services that are entering into the market are different digital tools to support different aspects of the agriculture or the food systems. So we can see different elements as we see in this picture. We are seeing drones, robotics, sensors, different platforms, different applications, some aspects more sophisticated, for example, blockchain, but also different applications and products and services that have a place in different in a different segment of the food system. So today we are seeing a lot of new products and services doing different kind of things with different layers of complexity enter into the market. And maybe we can be a bit like confused about all these plethora of possibilities because too many things are happening in two different directions. So because the market is growing, we need to pay attention to what is happening with this. But not only because the market is growing, it's also because the investments are growing on this. So as we can see in this chart, the global agri-food tech investment by year, it's been growing slowly. In 2021, it has this peak, and the global investment, it was of $53 billion globally. So many actors in different countries, different private and public actors are investing in the promotion, following the idea that more technologies, more digital technologies are going to be good for everyone. So that's the sense these days. We have more research, more money, more products and services into the market. And we are all, and we can see this rationale that this is going to be good, that this technology is going to be effective and profitable and sustainable for everyone. But also we are seeing a growing field of research on what is happening with these digital agricultural technologies. But what we are seeing is that this research is being focused on specific countries. We can find more analysis of what is happening here in the States, or in UK, or in Europe, or New Zealand, or Australia. So far, how we are understanding these technologies is being shaped for what happened in these places. But we still don't know what is happening in other places of the world or with other kind of farmers. And in different places of the world, for example, Latin America, but also India, but also in continents as Africa, we are seeing a flourishing ecosystem of these new enterprises and companies developing products and services for the agriculture and the food system. So why is it important that we talk about this today? Because we have a growing market. Many actors are doing this. We are a growing research that is still, we need more information about this. And more important is that even though there is a line of thought saying this is going to be so great, this is going to be so relevant for agriculture, other line of thought says, you know, maybe we have to consider potential unexpected implications of these technologies. This was one of the first reports that I read about this. And the main element, it says that, you know, if we are bringing these new platforms, but we are putting this in a society that is not equitable, so these new technologies are not going to change the situation, are going to replicate, are going to reinforce the actual structure of society. So for all this combination of forces, you know, the two lines of thought saying maybe we have to pay our more attention or ask different questions are important, particularly because the global investment and the global excitement of this topic is growing exponentially. So that's why I think it's important to talk about this today. That's why we have to know more about this to develop better research and better investment and better projects to promote digital agriculture.
I think, Jenny, there's a question. Would you like to address the questions as they come in, or should we save towards the end?
If it's short, and I think it can, I can see if it is going to be responded later, or I can include the response in the presentation. So go ahead,
sure.
Chris.
Chris, go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Melova. Velasco. I just had a quick question on the 2 slides ago, you had a bar graph that showed the increasing investment, and I didn't understand what the different colors meant on that bar graph.
Okay, no, there is no meaning in the color, only to show that is, I mean, to differentiate the year, but there is no meaning in the color.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Okay, so that's our first question, like why we need to talk about this for these reasons. But now, so if we want to go deeper in this, so next question would be, what is, I mean, what we are talking when we say digital agriculture. So I think this is a large umbrella. As I was saying at the beginning, this large umbrella covers different kinds of products and services with different layers of complexity. So in Latin America, for example, there are different technologies. For example, you know, WhatsApp groups or different SMS situations, also in Africa, also in India. And I'm bringing this example only to show that the different layers of complexity are across this. So maybe in the literature, it say that only like game-changing technologies, but in reality, farmers in different places of the world are using and combining the different services and products. So we are talking from WhatsApp groups, which is the more low-tech, but is working, applications, softwares, platforms, drones, sensors, even blockchain and other Internet of Things, other ways of technology. So the first thing is to acknowledge that we have a large plethora, but this idea is too broad. So the first element here is that we should think on digital products in terms of the service that offers to different farmers. So the first thing is that to understand what is happening on this umbrella, we need to think about these different types of service. And after analysis of the literature, these 5 types of services that I think are useful. So first thing is that we have to pay attention to these products and digital services that offer advisory and extension. So these are offering information to willing to a better decision making from farmers. So these offer information. Other tools are farm tools. So these more Internet of Things, sensors, drones, platforms that farmers use on a farm, you know, to collect, to analyze farm data. These are different. This is a different strain of digital products and services. But also there are other categories. Other is financial services. There are different products that are offering information, but also access to credit, access to government resources. So these technologies are also available for farmers, but offer this specific service. There are other group of products and services, more in the sense of facilitate the access to transactions. So in this sense, we can see marketplaces, e-commerce platforms, these kind of things. The main center there is the transaction, the commercial transaction. And finally, we have these supply chain management technologies that are aiming to integrate the change and to offer more information that is useful for the change in general. So for example, some products and services based on blockchain trying to offer traceability, they will fall within this category. So with this, we have more containers to think about these specific products and services, because not all the technologies that we see do the same and can have the same impact. And another way to see these nuances is through the data. So I think we all know that when we say data is the most important in the current economy, and the data apparently is so important and is relevant and is everywhere. But another thing that is important to consider that first, not all products and services are the same or do the same. Not all data is the same. So according to this source that I really think is very clear, so we can see 4 types of data. And for example, the first is the localized data. So it's information from soil, from seed, from water use, for fertilizer that is being captured. For example, through drones, through all these farm tools that are in the field and capture this information, they will enter from here. I'm sorry. That's so one specific type of groups. Only the farm tools, they will use more this localized data. The other products and services, for example, those products and services offering technical advisory to farmers through different applications, for example, that are using imported data, that are using climate forecasts, market prices, and they share this information with farmers. So the data is not the same. The challenge is different. So in this case of these applications offering forecast information of price market information, the challenge there is this information accessible, available? We can use this information, but when we have information gathered through a sensor, gathered through a robot, from another device, from Internet of Things, we are facing a different challenge, which is the privacy of this data, the ownership of this data, who is able to make money from this data. So only with these 2 ideas of data, we are seeing, we can have different conversations. And I think one important here with this talk about digital agriculture is that we have better conversations and more nuanced conversations about data, for example. And this exported data is the same. So if we have these devices connected with Internet of Things, what happened with this information is exported and shared with others, because it's aggregated with other information. So these elements are important. And finally is the ancillary data, that it's more the data that we found in reports from FAO or institutions working in agriculture, that they use like more aggregate information and statistics. So these elements help us to think about what we are saying when we say digital agriculture. So far, we are seeing a big umbrella, different categories within, and another element to consider is how the data occurs. So now, with this in mind, we can enter to explore, the socio-ethical implications of these potential technologies. So I would like to present it, or to suggest this way to organize and categorize. I think it can help us to order the conversation. So because I'm a rural sociologist, of course, I know that the social structures has a role in everything that we do and all the possibilities that we have. So that's why I include these power facets here, because there are elements that are there and influence what we can do, and we will see how in a second. So we have this big structure, but also we have at least 2 different elements: factors shaping access to these technologies. I think that's a different conversation. Who can have access, in which conditions, gaining what? That's a conversation. And a different conversation is how these technologies are being governed. How is the data governance on these? What is the business model? How this technology is making decisions about who can use it or not. So that are different conversations. So this is a way in which we can organize and categorize this conversation on the implications. So the first things to think when I said about these power structures, I only going to talk about these 2. So the structural power. So when we see these political, cultural, and economic structures in which we live, that constrains what we can do or we cannot do. So how the political development on agriculture is placed that open or close opportunities for small farmers, for example, and that's there, and that is happening in a different sphere apart from digital agriculture. I mean, it's happening, but it's going to influence that. And the other thing is the discursive powers. It's how our knowledge, how our narratives on digital agriculture are being shaped. So that's element that why we think this is so positive, who is leading the conversation on this, and why we are not having too many spaces to talk about the other unintended consequences that we have to pay attention to. So these elements are there, and it's important to acknowledge that are there, and it has an influence in the work we do. But this is something to be aware of. We cannot do many things on this. But when we think about the access, the main question when we talk about access is who is included and who is not included. When we talk about these large possibilities of digital services. So here are at least 4 elements that we need to pay attention to. First is the gap in access. And this is the most common, this is the most common element. And when we talk about the internet barrier or the lack of infrastructure, all enter in this category of gap in access. And that's an ubiquitous conversation, and is there, but it's only the first door. So the internet conversation, the infrastructure for sure is a relevant topic, and it can define who can be included and who cannot. But it's not the only one. So here is the internet infrastructure, 5G, broadband speed, and that kind of things. But later we have the gender gap. Has women and men the same possibilities to access to the same information? They have the same possibilities to access to the same products and services, or they use it or they own it? We know that there are differences there. Also, this data gap, who is able to access to this data, to understand this data and to use it. And this, finally, an integrated way of seeing it will be what are the gaps in capabilities, in motivations and opportunities to use these digital agricultural technologies. Because, for example, not all farmers need the 5 types of services of digital agriculture. Maybe a farmer, even with all the market information, they have physical barriers that cannot overcome. Maybe they don't need more market information because if they receive it, they cannot use this information and transform it into something else. Maybe this farmer needs a different kind of support, or maybe a farmer needs more information about good practices or about how to do something in the farm, and not necessarily market prices, because they market their products in the local context. So we all need to see these elements and how they interact to analyze what kind of products and services are better for what kind of farmers. But that is a conversation about access, about who can access out and who cannot. But what happens when we have a technology in place? That's a different conversation. And the question is, who governs technologies and how? So all the aspects that we talked before about data and the challenges and ownership and access, how the owners of this technology, how the company or the developers or the partnership developing the technology is going to make decisions on data. Who is the owner of data? I mean, if we are using this information from farmers, is the farmer the owner of data, and I'm going to put an ingredient that I'm not going to use that information, even though I'm not going to use it in an aggregate way, or I am doing it and I'm clear about that, and and this common knowledge that I am doing that in benefit of the business. That's an aspect. other aspect is what is the business model of companies selling the services. Not all the products are the same. Not all the business models are the same. And in a second, I will show some examples of different possibilities of how this ecosystem is flourishing. But these are elements that we need to pay attention to. So the main idea here is that we need to organize the conversation, because not all the questions are relevant for all the products or for the farmers. And even though when we have the technologies, we can have the same technology. For example, a technology offering farmers market information, but one can do it through an app that only runs in an iPhone, and they only do it in a WhatsApp group that runs in any kind of telephone. So that kind of decisions are business decisions, and that influence who can access or who are included in this technology or not. Okay, so with some elements, and I like to bring these, I think that are relevant. I like that this is more theoretical, but I think it's interesting to have this in mind. There was an analysis in 2021 of potential 5 patterns of inequality. So this professor from Germany, she did an analysis of what are the common topics that are appearing, and say, we can see 5 potential patterns of inequality, that elements that are there that we have to pay attention to. First is the inequalities in control over technology deployment. It is not the same. I mean, some actors are doing the deployment of technology that are not farmers, or farmers co-ops or different organizations. So that's an element. Other, the unequal distribution of benefits. So far, it seems that the technology are being more used for big farmers, and the gap between big farmers and small farmers is becoming bigger. The sovereignty over data and hardware, this idea, this conversation about data, the use is not even taking place. The inequalities in knowledge and skills. That means that not all people have the knowledge and the skills to take advantage of the technologies. And finally, how the problem is being defined and the capacities to solve the problem are not being distributed equally. So we are seeing different actors, not from agriculture, from the tech world, entering to solve these elements with no knowledge about agriculture or the food system. So these elements are important to consider. And finally, when we think about digital agri-food system transformation, this is a paper from this year, they identify that there are 3 framings to see this. One, and is the common framing that we see everywhere, is productivity to precision, which means if we use the digital technologies, we are going to be more efficient, more profitable, and more efficient, more productive, and more sustainable. That's the main narrative. Another narrative says, what happens if we can improve the farmers' right to technological sovereignty? It's a different conversation like this. Like the first one is more the market evolving. I mean, normally with no thinking about this. But the other is like how we can bring the farmer right to the conversation, and how we can bring farmers to be the agents of this process. And there is another view thinking about traceability and how this is going to be so disruptive. And this is more connected with this talk about blockchain and the different implications that this is going to bring. Maybe you are aware that the European Union put a law the last year that all farmers, that the different products, included cocoa, coffee, coming from different places in the world, they have to show a traceability that this product is not connected with deforestation. So this law from Europe is going to affect and is going to change how farmers are marketing with Europe, and how they can show their operation is not contributing to deforestation or other other causes. So here, everything starts to connect, this structural power that we talked before, enter because it changes, is going to affect how this ecosystem is going to develop. So it was the first, like the conceptual part, like the elements to think. And now I'm going quickly, I'm going to show some examples, 2 examples of how I think how this occurs in reality. So I'm going to bring 2 short examples in which I pay attention to what was occurring in 2 countries, one Colombia and the other is Honduras, to show how the digital ecosystem is conformed, what are the actors, what is occurred. And I think that it can help us to see why it's important to have a more oriented conversation on digital agriculture. If we have this general, messy, confused, like, in which we combine all the terms, we cannot advance. But if we have a more specialized conversation, more specific, we can see what are the gaps that we need to address, because this is very connected with the context. I mean, we cannot have one solution for any country in the world. So these 2 examples, I think it can show that. So I will show first what I did in Colombia and what I found. So I did a mapping of what was available in the Colombian market in general, not for a specific crop, but in general, because the market is not as evolved as in other countries. And I identified, to this mapping of secondary information, I identified 93 digital products and services that are actually active, that are in the market. I found many things that are in development, that are in design, but actually in the market. And so a farmer can use it today. So this is the distribution of these 93 in the different categories that we discussed before. So I found that the 65% are farm tools, as we say, elements that we use in farm to capture, analyze information, sensor, drones. Only a 17% is connected with market linkages, marketplaces, and e-commerce. Only 9% financial services, 6% supply chain management, this blockchain and traceability efforts, and only 3% of my sample, it was in advisory and extension. So, and what I found, like when I deep dive, that, for example, all the companies offering farm tools are private, including large startups, medium. So that is idea of who can bring, so who is the people behind this and what is the business model behind. And in this, the majority are focusing on big farmers, because these elements makes more sense when you have large lands. At least the kind of technologies are being developed now. In marketed linkages, I found different actors. I found national organizations, startups, but also social companies. But I found that these are mainly located in major cities. So, which means that only the farmers close to these major cities can have access to these products and services, because the logistic infrastructure is not in place to do a national, delivery. In the financial services, I found national private companies, including startups, trying to reach small farmers. So we are seeing innovation here as well. And finally, in technical assistance, I found many services developed by national centers of research. Cenicafe is the coffee national center of research, and Agrosavia is a national research center, particularly for agriculture. So what I'm showing this is only to make evident that the actors, the scope, that the size of digital products and services are different across categories. So we need to understand what is happening within each category to see how we can advance and to identify the the challenging aspects for each one. So that's one of the main elements here. This in the case of Colombia. And this was the last one about the supply chain management. Here, I only found international sources, for example. So that brings a different aspect to consider about who is developing this. This was in the case of Colombia, which is emerging, which is like we are doing things to advance, but it still is too emerging. There are too many things happening at the same time, and there is not a conversation about the sector, but there are some efforts to advance. And this is an example of different mapping that I did. This is particularly for Honduras, for the coffee value chains. And it was shorter. It was between October and December of 2022. And we only mapped technologies available for coffee. And we found 23 technologies. How the categories were built, it was different. So we found more digital market linkages and less financial services at something in between for the coffee value chain. So this is a summary. This is a different visualization of what I found. So we did an analysis of the readiness to scale. So all this is in the market somehow, but this project was different. So I was able to talk to many of them and to categorize somehow in which place are they. There are in prototype, close to market, or there are scaling and there are mature. So we are seeing, so here is the general view, but here are also the products and services developed in Central America with current operation in Honduras and Guatemala for the coffee value chain. So we found different elements. So again, in advisory and extension, we found some things in development, other more mature. In farm tools, we only find one. In financial services too, and the other, it was more in market linkages. When we think about the actors, it was, again, different. We found partnerships, development organizations, coffee associations, startup and medium companies doing different efforts. So I think that these two examples show that we need to understand the local ecosystem or the national ecosystems of digital agriculture to see what is happening within. And we have this empirical evidence, we can ask questions to that configuration. So that, I think, is an element, because with all that information, we can say, okay, what are the specific social implications of these technologies for small farmers in this particular country or in this particular value chain? So here, my call is for specificity. It's how we can make better analysis based on these categories, but with information from the local level, with local evidence. So to start closing this part, I would like to summarize the aspect that I share. So the first thing is that the sector is not monolithic. So we have different elements. So we have different tools that collect. So digital technology is a technology that collects, store, analyze, and share information digitally. So we have different kind of technologies doing that, with different layers of complexity and different actors behind and different sophistication. So we are not talking only about the technology. We are talking about the kind of product, the kind of actor behind, the kind of business model, the aspect that is touching within the food system, and the farmer that it will be the best user for that. So it is a conversation about different things. The other element is that we need, I will say we need to see these different services, because one element here is that technology entered to change relationship. In the past, farmer go to the extensionist agent and have this information about weather or about prices or or with a different actor. But now with an app or with a text, the farmer will receive the same information. So we are seeing a change in the social relationship that was in place before. So, but that change is different. One thing is with an advisory, another thing is within farm tools, another thing is within market linkages. The relationship within each type of service is different. So the implication is going to be different. The other element here is that the data, there are different types of data, and each type of data brings different kind of challenges. And that's an aspect that we need to consider. Other is that we are seeing that this optimism behind technologies that says that with digital agriculture, we will have less transaction costs, we will be more efficient, and in consequence, we will have economic efficiency, equity, and environmental sustainability. That's the main idea, like the mainstream idea. What I have seen today is like, this seems so good, but how a farmer accessing or having access to one technology to start to follow this path, that's a big question. Like the big question is, what kind of farmer, what kind of crop, what kind of technology is going to allow farmers to follow this hypothetical path? I think these are this path is one of the elements that we need to be more critical and to think more about this. And the other is that there is a potential way to unpack and who is included and who is not, all the different gaps in, and it's not only infrastructure, and it is not only about youth, it's not only about the young people is better, it can work better with this. It's not only that. We have other different gaps that we have to pay attention to. And also we have to pay attention to the different challenges in ownership, in access, in privacy, but also the business models behind that. So this presentation, it was about what are the social implications for small farmers? Well, it's unclear what are the specific implications that these technologies will have on small farmers. But what we know today is that according to the presence and depth of these gaps, the several types of services offered and the business models promote, and the public policies in place, like with all the combination of these, we can grasp this understanding about what are the implications for a specific group of farmers. What we know is that they are today in a different, in not the best situation. And as we say at the beginning, the technology is not going to alter the status quo. The technology is not going to change the position in society that farmers have. So that's a thing to never forget. And to finish here, only two elements. If we all feel like we need to promote a more inclusive digitalization, I think two elements are relevant. First is to acknowledge the non-neutrality of technology, in the sense that technology is never neutral. They have specific interests and intentions. As I say, it's not the same as technology developed by a social enterprise, but a big corporation or the government. Simply is not. So the values and interests are within the technology, and that shape who can use it and how. And we need more questions. We need to ask more questions when we talk with developers, when we start projects trying to promote this. An example of these questions are: who owns the data? Who has access? How are the benefits? The benefits are distributed. How the risk are distributed? What agricultural systems are being promoted? I mean, with these technologies are spaces for, I don't know, agroecology or for other ways of promote, and who make the decisions about this. That was all. Thank you very much. Here is my contact information so we can continue with this conversation. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Jenny. That was a really, really powerful talk. I think I speak on behalf of people who aren't even here that they're going to find this very interesting. During the course of the talk, it occurred to me that some of my colleagues will be interested in nominating speakers for the future. And so thinking of everybody, I dropped in the chat the form that we use to establish placeholders and to establish new speakers for the series. And so folks, please tag on to that. So Jenny, there's time now for questions. And so let me begin with one. I found really interesting the 2x2 table. As sociologists, looking at Doug over here, sociologists, we're very fond of 2x2 tables. and one of the pregnant parts of that table that occurred to me was how clearly it focuses our attention on particular elements, but how sometimes the interaction between the elements is not made completely clear. And so the interaction I'd like you to talk about that was echoed throughout your talk was how it was that, for instance, with digital farm products, you pointed out that the digital farm products were mostly in big cities and so eliminated rural people from playing a role. How can that interaction be extended out to rural places? So how can we begin to capture interactions between farmers and mid-level organizations like cooperatives or farmers markets that then grow to central cities and larger organizations? So hopefully that question's clear. Please go ahead. And Doug will go second and Chris will go after that. Thank you for your interest again, Jenny. Thank you for your remarks.
Thank you, Alfonso. I don't know if I fully understand your question. So if you can summarize it again, I will appreciate it.
Sure. In brief, the question is how do, for instance, digital ag products get located in particular interactions with smaller organizations that serve rural areas? So for instance, a farmers cooperative, right? Individual farmers can use that, but if the cooperative adopts the tools, then there's a different level of aggregation, different concerns about privacy and etc. But at that more aggregate level, the opportunities could be larger.
Okay.
So, does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it depends of how we develop these projects and what kind of a company we are offering to small farmers. For example, I spoke with I interviewed the CEO of the farmer cooperative in Colombia. They were using the traceability that it was being offered by the client, because the client asked for the traceability. Of course, so they send the link and they start to fill off the data, and they start to realize that if they are offering all the data in the system of the client, they are giving power away to the client, because the client with all this data can have the knowledge of what is happening and how. So when they realize these privacy challenges, they decide to create their own platform. It's not a sophisticated platform, but it's their platform of traceability. And they say to the company, thank you very much, I'm not using this anymore. Instead, I'm offering you this summary of my information that I only going to share with you the elements that you need. So I think it helps us to think that maybe we are too much invested in the startup mindset, and we need like one product like being everywhere, Facebook or Uber or Airbnb, but maybe we need more localized approaches in which farmers have agency and have power over their own information. So that's why I also spoke about the levels of complexity, because maybe we think that we need something super sophisticated, and maybe we do, but not in all cases. So if we see the situation and we advise farmers that they can have, they can develop the skills and all this information at the end, at least from my point of view, all this information that they can gather here is a competitive advantage here. It can be, if it's framed in that way, if it's thought in that way. So I think that we all that are supporting this, we need to understand better the business decisions that farmers do. But I think now we are too invested in to understand the business decision of the startups technologies offering this. But maybe if we balance the equation, we can see different things.
Yeah, boy, great answer. I agree with you completely. And I think that it's a useful thing for us to think about in ICICLE regarding the comprehensive nature of our efforts, right? So how it is that we really incorporate local folks into those decision-making processes, super important. So Doug, you're next, Chris, and then Rajiv dropped a question. So very good. Go ahead, Doug.
Thanks again for your presentation. It does raise a lot of great questions. I think you touched a little bit on it in response to Alfonso's question, but I'm interested in your suggestions about specific strategies for designing an innovation process that is more likely to produce things on the back end that are going to be relevant to, say, small farms or other marginalized potential client populations that aren't going to be as attractive to, I think, original private sector investors, which will drive the bus without that intention.
I think I understood. There is a framework called the Responsible Innovation Framework that is being suggested in the literature as a framework that is useful for think about this. Let me see if I can find easily something about that to share. But this is a framework with 4 dimensions, saying, it's more a way of thinking and how we can what kind of questions people developing projects or developing technologies have to ask themselves to think about this. That's like the main component there. And let me see. Yeah, so it's here. Let me see if I can share this super quickly. So this responsible innovation approach says that we have to make questions in 4 different dimensions: anticipation, reflexivity, inclusion, and responsiveness. So if we all, we as people who develop projects, who write grants to develop projects, or that we work with different companies, we can think about this. And for example, these are, what are the complexities on certain things, future scenarios of risk that are tied to this. So this is a conversation about what if this technology, what if there is a bug and all of the data is bleak? What happened? And what are the implications of this? For whom? What are the risks? What are the ethical implications? Other is, who is included? Who is included? What perspectives are being included on this? What farmers are being invited to the discussion? Only the big farmer, the more farmer that talk more, or we are open the participation to different voices to understand different needs. Other is reflexivity. So what are the ethical and social dimensions? So when the project is advancing and we are identifying different things, what we do, how we include that new reflection of the new elements that we're seeing about that. And this is related that how we can adapt something when it's happening, when we are thinking about inclusion, anticipation, responsiveness. So I think this framework, the Responsible Innovation Framework, it's provoking, it's interesting because bring new questions. So we can bring this question and to have, a space of the dialogue of these 4 dimensions and how it's going to reflect it in the project that we are doing. I don't know, Doc, if that responds to the question, but hope it's useful.
I know we're short on time, so I'll jump to Chris.
Thank you for your talk, Dr. Melo Velasco. This is really great. First, I had two questions. The first is a super fast one, but toward the end of your slides, you showed two different scatter plots of readiness, these readiness graphs. And I was just wondering what the difference between those two graphs was. You went to mute. Dr. Melo Velasco. You're muted.
I'm sorry.
No.
What is the next question?
The first
sorry.
question is just these readiness to scale charts. What's the difference between the two of them?
Okay, cool. Thank you for that. So the order is inverse here. So when we did this map, let me share this. So this mapping is the result of research that we did in Honduras with the CIAT Biodiversity Alliance. So we did an analysis what technologies are available. So these are in Central America. So with always the flag we have is Honduras or Guatemala. But also we did a more general view to find another technologies. For example, Sirio app is developed in Mexico, but potentially can be used in Honduras. This Plataforma Agroclimática Cafetera, it was from a different country. This was from India. This was from Colombia. This was from the States. This was from Brazil. So those without the flag, there are other potential products and services available in coffee, but that not have been like root in Central America. That's the main difference.
I see. And so is there a citation for this? Is there a way to cite this?
Yes, I can send that to you, of course.
Okay, or throw it in the chat is fine too.
Yep.
My sort of higher level question is about understanding, maybe I want to give the background that I realize that I've been shown a biased view of digital agriculture, right? Coming from a computer science background. I tend to think about these things from a free market perspective and a liberalized free market perspective. Hey, how do we reduce costs? If we reduce costs across the board, everybody should be happy because it's cheaper. And I think it relates to Rajiv's question because this is how you get to AI, right? You eventually say, hey, the best thing I can do is pull labor out of the situation and I save all this money. But increasingly, I'm hearing voices that are saying, yeah, that's not the only thing to consider. And you really need to be more robust, sort of like the framework you were offering at the end. So my specific question is, have we discovered a way to sort of create a single metric that can help us understand what small farmers are interested in that maybe differs from what large farmers are interested in? I know that's a loaded question, but I figured I'd throw it out there. It would be awesome if there was an answer, but also, yeah.
Thank you, Christopher. I think it's a very interesting question. I think that, I'm glad that you say that you came from a background in engineering because it's different. And I think depending on who had the conversation, that the outcome, it will be a different indicator or another. So I think in regards to your question is how, who is invited to talk about that metric that you are talking. We need, for sure, I have a background in business, so I can talk with business people in a different way than my colleagues that are only sociologists. And so I think that if we bring business people, sociologists, engineers, of course, and farmers, for God's sake, and farmers to the conversation, we can have a more nuanced perspective. But I think we need to bring I mean, we need to change the conversations if we want to have different outcomes. That's why also at the beginning, I was saying that I'm interested in doing research that is useful for, for advanced academic scholarship, but also to have information that is useful for practitioners, from farmers, from different actors. So I think if we develop an effort in which the purpose is clear and we bring different voices, it is possible. I don't know if you have the indicator that you are thinking of, but at least to go in that direction, to go a step more.
That's a great answer, and thank you for that. Thank you.
So if I may, Jenny, I'd like to say something right there with respect to both Rajiv and Chris's question. It seems to me that that's a 2x2 table, that the response is distinguished by whether or not the small farmer is more economically oriented or more, so that is to say, profit and efficiency oriented in a neoclassical economics perspective, right? Or if they're more communitarian oriented, if the version of their economics is oriented towards not towards profit maximization. So that's one dimension, right, of economic profit. And then another dimension is scale of market. There's a lot of small farmers who grow only a few acres of product, but are very commercially oriented and very ecosystem oriented. So I think that the AI tools that Rajiv and Chris are talking about, there may not be one metric, Chris or Rajiv, or one set of AI tools, but the AI tools, in particular AI tools, will vary by where the farmer's located in that 2x2 table. Can I get a reaction from you, Jenny?
I think it's a topic that we have to talk more. For my background, I mean, I know that we tend to categorize, like in that sense, like profit-oriented, not profit-oriented. And maybe that's a way. I work in Huella Delta, in the company that I work in Colombia. We have a different approach, not necessarily to the mindset, but only through the market connection. Like, let me see what know about your business model only through analyzing your market connections. And that's, so in that sense, if it's profit-oriented or not, maybe that's not that definitive. Maybe it's more about the actions that you are doing with your business model. So I will suggest to include other categories to ask the question.
Indeed. And on that cheerful note, let us ask questions to develop better approaches in our work. And so, Jenny, I really want to thank you for your time today. We would be happy to have you provide you the link to this lecture, and hopefully other audiences you're aware of will also find it interesting. We certainly have. So, folks, I would just want to remind you one more time, in the chat, there's the forms for nominating folks for the speaker series. Please do it so that we can get more folks lined up for the 2020, the year ahead. And Carlos, you've got this recording now, right? So I'll turn it over into your capable hands, and I'll wish everybody, wherever you are, a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Dr. Melo Velasco, can you offer that the title of that paper?
Yes, give me a second.
Yeah, please drop that in that'd be great. I was interested in that as well. And Beth, I see you. I'm so glad to see you, because you can see where this is going to add a few paragraphs to that ethics